Welcome to another episode of Karz Talks, where opinions are facts and facts are opinions. When you are a young enthusiast, you're just getting into cars, you want something fun, you want a performance car, you want to be tearing up the streets like Dom Toretto. The worst thing you could do is go out and buy a modern car today. By modern, I actually, it's going back pretty far. We're going back probably 15 or more years because pretty much cars have been about the same for that span of time, in the sense of modern cars are not friendly for someone just getting into cars. And, it's not because modern cars are less safe or less reliable or whatever the case may be. It's simply due to the fact that modern cars are very complicated. They're very complicated machines designed and built by very smart people. And when you're young and you're just getting into cars, you don't know shit. So the last thing you want to be doing is buying something relatively new, a modern car, and thinking you're doing yourselves any favor. With that, obviously, something you buy that's only a year or two old or brand new in 2025 is going to be way more expensive than something made in 2005 or so, so there's that aspect. Also, a young enthusiast will encounter huge difference in expense of modifying something made today versus modifying something made 20 years ago. Big difference in just the overall cost of a modern car. And there's so many elements. But let's first take a look at one of the biggest elements. Obviously, it's the cost of a vehicle, right? When you're young and you're just getting into cars, you probably don't have a lot of money. You're probably working an entry-level job or something of the sort, right? You're paying rent, or if you're lucky to live with your parents still, which probably most of you are, because that's just how life is anymore. At least you ain't got that expense there. So, but if you only make like $30,000 a year, you don't want to be spending a whole lot of money because you just simply can't on your car. You got to worry about other things in life, right? Here's why new cars suck.
So we all know new cars are expensive. It's nothing new. We've seen $50,000 Nissan Rogues, $150,000 F-250s. We've seen crazy window stickers. But here's the deal. I think some of these new vehicles are becoming less reliable, and they're being manufactured in a cheaper way with either cheaper wages overseas, in addition to cheaper materials like plastic and all this stuff. And the manufacturer will never give the customer the increased savings. So it's like, what? You're using plastic around the engine bay for manifolds and all this stuff, and it would be a lot better if you use metal, but I'm not getting any savings from you using plastic. You're just increasing your profit.
Do you hear what he just said? It is so true. These manufacturers, they're cost cutting. Obviously, they're using cheaper components, but yet these vehicles continue to get more and more expensive. So that leads to two issues. One, they're just more expensive. And two, they're not going to last as long. They're not going to hold up as good. Even Toyota in 2025 is not as good as Toyota in 2005. A Toyota in 2005 will probably outlive you and the rest of your family. A Toyota made in 1995 will probably outlast your family, your family's family. The Toyota made in 2005 they just don't make them the same anymore. You pop the hood of a car made in the 2000s. It can be anywhere from, let's say, 1995 to 2005. Span of 10 years. A lot of nice, awesome cars came out in that time. When you pop the hood on a car made in that time frame, the intake manifold's metal. So many things are metal. A lot of times manufacturers weren't even using plastic valve covers yet. They were still using metal covers. Everything was made to last. Things were built better. If you're a young enthusiast and you buy a car today, expect trouble. Now, on the same side of that, if you buy a car that's already 20 some years old, you're probably going to have trouble too, just because things are wearing out. But things are wearing out because the car's 20 years old. Cars today, things are wearing out when they're 2 months old because they're made poorly. And it's just, I think as a young enthusiast, that's one reason you should stay away from modern cars. Now, also, if you are a young enthusiast, you're working on a fixed income, chances are you don't have a whole lot of money. You want something a little bit new. You don't want like a 1990s town car or something for like a couple grand. Like, you want something. You want something reliable. You got to get to work, right? You got to go make the money to pay for the car. So you got to make sure you get to work. You want something a little bit newer. Let's say you want something made in 2000, I don't know, let's say 2005. A lot of cars made in 2005 are built really well. You have a lot of modern car features in the sense of safety and functionality, but you don't have all the like bells and whistles of real modern cars. You don't have all the driver assists and stuff like that. Although you can include some of that in an older car via the aftermarket. But for the most part, anything made 20 some years ago is still going to feel newer than something made in the 90s or definitely the 80s. You drive anything from the 80s, it feels ancient compared to something made in the 2000s, which is already 20 plus years old in many cases. So it's a big difference. Trust me. Let's say you found a 2005 model year car, right? It's a used car lot. They want 10 grand for it, something really nice. It's got all the things you really want. It's got a big aftermarket support. You can do something with it. You can customize it and make it your own, and it won't cost a whole lot to do it. And that car, let's say, $10,000, right? $10,000. And because this is your first car loan, most times you're going to have to put money down. But in this calculator doesn't give me that option. But let's say $10,000, you're borrowing $10,000, you put money down. Even if you worked your butt off and you started early building your credit, you're still not going to get the best interest rate for your first car loan. Banks are going to be hesitant. Let's say they gave you 12%, right? 12% interest rate. It's not great. It's not horrible, but that's likely what you will expect for your first loan, right? 12%, 60 months, $10,000. Your monthly car payment's $222. Now, for any reason you would get approved for a longer term, you'll pay more interest, but your monthly payment would be less, under $200, $196 a month for, a car. That's pretty good, right? Then you got to factor in insurance. That's probably another couple $100, depending where you are. And then, you probably want to pocket some money for repairs. Overall, you're probably spending less than $500 a month all in to have this car of your own. So you still got money you can, put away for your savings. You want to move out on your own. You got money put away to fix the car if you need to fix it when something breaks. You got money to put into the car for modifications to make it your own. And life's good, man. You are chilling. But what happens if you buy something new? Let's say you wanted something just recent. Let's say for your first car, you had to have something you've seen all over the internet. Like, this is that car. Like, people are burning up the roads in this car. And they've been made for a few years now. And you can find them used with like 20,000 miles on them for, $20,000. Well, here's the caveat when it comes to lending. Lenders are probably going to feel more comfortable. Usually the older the car, the more trouble you're going to have getting lending, especially a first-time car loan. So you might have a better chance of getting approved on a newer car, even if it's more expensive. And that's just because the bank's liability is technically less, because the way they look at it is the car's newer, it's still got a warranty or whatever, it's less likely to have a mechanical problem. And then you, the borrower, has to choose between fixing it or making the payment. They look at that as a liability aspect when giving loans. So newer car, technically in their mind, lower liability. So they'll usually give you better interest rate, and they won't fight you as much if it's something at 20 years old, even if the loan is a lot less. Weird how that works out. Not to say that's always the case, but generally speaking. But either way, you're going in, you want to finance this new car. Let's say this new car is literally twice as much, $20,000. In today's money, you might think, well, $20,000 for a car that's a couple years old isn't too bad. And well, technically no, but you got to think how much you're paying a month for that $20,000. So let's break it down. $20,000. Let's say they give you 72 months. And let's say because it is a newer car, they give you 11% interest. So now you're at $381 a month for this new car, but that's not factoring in insurance. Insurance is going to be usually more on a new car because the insurance company also looks at its own set of liabilities. They have to look at things like, okay, well, if it's an older car, then the parts to fix that car aren't as expensive. Therefore, if there's an accident claim, the cost to repair the vehicle is less. That's less of a liability. A newer cars are expensive. Parts on new cars are expensive. My 2020 Mustang, each headlight, just the headlight, it was a whole headlight assembly, and it's a lot, and it's like this on a lot of new cars now. $1,200 for just one. So if you get in a head-on collision, even if it's just minor, technically speaking, you bust two headlights on a new Mustang, right there is $2,400. Just like that, poof, gone. Insurance companies look at cars like that. You're like, okay, well, parts are more expensive. It's going to be more expensive if we have to pay out a claim. Therefore, we're going to have to charge higher premiums for that new car. And it's kind of counterintuitive because you think a new car would be cheaper, right? In insurance because they're safer. They got all these driving aids. And sometimes some of that stuff does come into play. But overall, the insurance companies are just looking at the aspect of cost of repair if repairs need to be made from a claim. That's why if you're a bad driver, you have a lot of accidents, your premium's up because the insurance company is like, well, this guy's pretty much guaranteed to wreck this thing while he's insured with us, and we're going to be paying a lot of money to fix it. So that's how that works. So even though you got this new car, you're paying $381 a month financing it, but then you're paying probably another, I don't know, let's say easy math. If you were just paying $200 on the old car a month for insurance, you're going to be paying like $300 for this new car, just easy math. So total, you're already up $300 more a month in expense between the payment and insurance between this old car and this new car. Now, that's not factoring in other things. Let's say, you still want to modify it. You still want to make it your own. You're going in, you're looking at all these performance parts and you're like, what the hell is going on? You got $500 here, $700 for this part. You don't even know what this other part does, but it's $1,200. And before you know it, you've already got a whole laundry list of parts you want to put on your car. And it's like $5,000-$6,000 worth of parts. And you're like, what the hell? This was like a third, if that, for the old car. But this new car's thousands to modify it. Exactly. The cost to modify a new car is ridiculous. The cost of owning a modern car is stupid. Young enthusiasts should steer clear. And the biggest reason why a young enthusiast should steer clear is because the complexity of modern cars is just gotten so out of hand. It takes a long time. Trust me when I say this, it takes a long time to be able to understand how modern cars work. And, if you want to be able to learn how they work and fix them and work on them yourself, or at least understand how things work so you can make informed decisions on what you want to do to your car, new cars are terrible because they're so complex. I've been messing with cars. Let's see, what the hell? I'm 32 now. I've been messing with cars since I was 15, pretty much. I got my first car, I was like 16. I started playing around with it, 16, 17, and I've been messing with cars ever since. So I got quite a few years of messing with cars, and I'm still constantly learning because I don't know. Modern car, every time I get a new modern car, I'm constantly having to learn different ways of how that car is. Like every car is different. Tuning cars is different from one car to the next. The type of parts you should put on that car for power is different from one car to the next. It takes a lot to understand all these different elements. If you are young getting in the cars and you're just learning kind of the basics of modding cars and understanding how things work, the last thing you want to be doing is messing with a modern car because it's overwhelming, and chances of you doing something stupid is far greater with a modern car. Okay. You get a modern car, you do the wrong thing. I mean, modern cars are so picky, especially turbocharged cars. And I'll get that to here in a second. Turbocharged cars is a whole nother part of this discussion. I mean, if you breathe on a modern turbocharged car wrong, it won't work. You have to be willing to learn and understand these things. And you simply just can't do it in a short amount of time. It takes a long time to learn all these different things. And you, as the young enthusiast, probably aren't going to give yourself that much time. You just want to get after it, man. You want to get in there, you want to get your hands dirty, and you want to get after it. So you're probably going to get yourself in trouble. Turbocharged cars, like I said, it's a whole other part of this discussion. Turbocharged cars have been around a long time. They are a lot more common now in the last 15 years than they were in the last 30 years. Turbocharged cars in like the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s were reserved for the most part for performance-oriented, specific performance vehicles. You generally ever had a turbocharged car in those eras that were just meant to be daily commuter cars. But then once you get into like the 2010s, the 2010s, and now and back into the 2020s, almost every car is turbocharged, whether it be the performance car or just the everyday grocery getter. They're all turbocharged for the most part. That means that if you want something relatively in the last few years, you're looking at something turbocharged 9 times out of 10. And I know turbocharged cars, I love turbo cars. I understand the allure of a turbo car, but you have to understand that a turbo car is a lot more money to modify. It's a lot more money to take care of because there's different steps of maintenance and ownership that you have to take in consideration when you have a turbocharged car. You got to drive them differently if you want them to last. You got to make sure you use good fuel. I mean, most modern turbocharged cars can get away with 87 octane, but even then, just because the manufacturer recommends and says it can and it will, doesn't mean it's really good in all scenarios. And the moment you put a tune on a modern turbocharged car, you're immediately forced to run 93 octane. So you got to run, good stuff no matter what. You got to make sure you change the oil more frequently on modern turbocharged cars. Mainly, that's just because they're direct injected. That has its own set of problems that you don't see on cars made 20 years ago. It's just pretty much in the last 15 years did direct injection really take off. So that's another problem you got to consider. So there's all these things, right? And especially in a turbo car, if you are new to cars, the last thing you want to do, new or old, is get into a turbocharged car from the rip. Don't do it. Because you are going to likely end up with a blown engine. And it's not because I'm calling y'all stupid. It's not because you are stupid. It's because you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. If you don't know what you should be doing and something happens, then it's going to be a bad day. It's going to be a tough day for you. To limit that on yourself, it's best if you're getting into cars to get a non-turbocharged car. Get something with a V8, maybe a V6. That way, and naturally aspirated, you have a lot of power. Or, get into a Honda or something. You can build a Honda engine, NA, to make a lot of power. 200 wheel horsepower, NA, naturally aspirated, no turbo. You got to think in something in a light chassis like an older Honda. That's going to be a fun little car. And you're going to learn understanding of the engine without the complexity of that turbocharger. And you can always get a car that has a good engine. There's a lot of cars out there that have good foundations to be a turbo engine. It's just not designed that way from the factory. So many LS engines, for example, or Honda engines, for example, they're not designed to be turbocharged engines, but it doesn't stop people from putting turbos on them and making 400-500 horsepower relatively easy, the older stuff. And that's the thing. Get into something naturally aspirated first. Learn how things first. Learn old school methods of how and why the engine's running the way it is. And then if you keep onto that car, You want turbo, put it on. Do not jump right into a turbo car off the rip, because it's just probably going to end bad for you. Late 90s, early 2000s, or mid 2000s even, was such a good time. A lot of cars then built in that period are perfect beginner enthusiast cars. So many of them. That's where I would suggest to look. 2000s, late 90s might be pushing it. You know, anything in the 2000s, mid 2000s, even up to late 2000s, you have a lot of stuff there that was pretty good. You can get into. You can get into it cheaper than something new. You can get into it and you can learn to grow with it. You don't have to be pressured into understanding all these different things of a modern car. They're much more simple. They're going to be easier to fix, more simple to fix, cheaper to fix. In most cases, you're going to not spend as much financing if you have to do that, if you just don't have enough. But even if you just saved up the money, you will likely be able to buy something outright in those years that you want for a few thousand cash, if that's what you have saved up. You're not going to do that anything in the last 5 years unless it's like completely wreck the vehicle or something. So you can go that way too. You have a lot more flexibility with your options. And that's what I suggest. You should never get into something new. I see it all the time. You know, I see it like in the Elantra group now, because this new car I have, the Elantra N line, it is a very entry-level car in the sense that it's an entry-level sporty car. So it's very appealing to young enthusiasts. I see time in, time out, questions. These young enthusiasts are getting into these cars and they don't understand. They have limited knowledge. They're asking questions that are pretty serious. They're questions reserved for people who have a pretty good understanding of cars. And they're asking these questions simply because they just don't know. They're trying to make all this stuff work. They're trying to understand why this and why that, and they just don't know. I've seen so many dumb questions, and it's not because they're dumb. It's just because they don't know. And I've seen so many dumb assertions about cars. You know, if you're young and you don't know better, and you go online, you listen to the wrong people, and it's very easy to do. Very, very easy to be misinformed. Once again, if you don't know better and you read something someone else is saying, and they're telling you something that is objectively wrong, and it's something that can potentially be bad for your car, but because you don't know better, you think it's the right answer, you go and do it, and then you have a bad experience, something happens, you break something. This is why it's best for young enthusiasts to get something older and learn on that, grow with that car. And that way you don't have to worry about the expense of a new car, worrying about if someone's going to give you the right information, the wrong information. You know, you don't have to worry about a lot of things, and you'll be able to more or less enjoy learning that car and enjoying being a young enthusiast. And that's why we do it, because we want to enjoy yourselves. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where it's going to create a lot of stress, a lot of financial trouble, where you don't enjoy it anymore. So that's why I suggest any new enthusiasts completely stay away from modern cars, and why modern cars suck for the young enthusiast. Anyways, let me know what you think. It's going to wrap it up here for the video. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, share with everyone you know. If you want to see more content like this and you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Keep a lookout for the next Cars Talks video.